this is the perfect leeway into, the big news over the weekend with the NBA in particular, and with the arrests of Chauncey Billups in a poker ring affiliated
Yeah.
with the mafia, crime families, as they announced, and Terry Rozier, who we saw being investigated about a year ago,
Yeah.
and I guess the NBA came up and said, there's not conclusive evidence. FBI said otherwise this past
Yeah.
week, and arrested him with that, and cue the low lights montages of Terry Rozier over the last couple of years, because there's certainly a lot of them. And it's just drastically changed things. Gambling's obviously always been there, but I think the convenience of it and how easy it is to be kind of looped into gambling in sports in general is a big deal. So, in kind of pairing all of those things, you can kind of dig a little bit deeper, and it feels like every sport at the moment has a huge microscope under it, especially the NBA.
Yeah.
But the NFL is definitely there as well. We talk about and banter on this podcast a lot about the Kansas City Chiefs and the calls that they get and how questionable they can be. And I feel like a big part of that is gambling. It's an easy leeway into, hey, let's if they did an investigation, let's make some comparables. Obviously, UTEP did
Yeah.
that recently, and we brought that up. We think about other things like the NBA and players accessing I guess understanding their props a little bit better and kind
Mhm.
of changing things with that. And then Tim Donaghy back in the day, getting in, he's another ref that was put a huge nasty scar on the NBA altogether. So
Yeah. No, the sports betting thing, that's been so crazy to see what happened with Chauncey Billup, Terry Rozier, the coach from the Cavs.
mhm.
I've seen a lot of videos of that J.R. Smith fumble versus the Warriors was
Oh yeah.
all about making money, and we, I don't think I've talked about it much here. I think in text message groups with like you, Chris, I've talked about it like, okay, Las Vegas is winning this one because there's a script
Mhm.
to it. Because I do some of the sports betting, some of the the player props, and I read at times like the biggest player prop played is like say it's Derrick Henry for rush yards against one of the worst defenses. You can sort of look at Bijan this past week. I can
Mhm.
imagine his player prop for rush yards, rush receiving yards were probably some of the most played player props this week, and it lost against a horrible defense because Atlanta just, who knows if they just really do suck or this was just a script, because NFL is part of all these betting organizations, so they make money, NFL makes money, so they're